Pixel 10 Pro on the left hand side, guys, and the S25 Ultra on my right hand side. A lot of people do say that the Pixel 10 Pro is the same phone as the previous one, and I did say this too, but it's the same and also different. Besides the new Tensor G5, new ISP, guys, which means that the camera is the same, the hardware is basically the same, but the processing is new. And with that, of course, Google introduced some new things like the ProRes zoom that uses Gen AI to accelerate a zoom, but you can see the beautiful landscape. This is now the front camera, by the way, 4K 60 FPS. So in this video I'm gonna be doing a camera comparison between the Pixel 10 Pro and the S25 Ultra. Let's try to test stabilization. And now let's turn to the beautiful Afitos and show you the back camera. This now is the back camera, guys. And as I promised, I'm gonna show you the beautiful Afitos. Already amazing scenery in 4K 60. Ultra wide, guys. Now, let's try to use 1x, okay, on both phones. Let's do a 2x, which is a crop from the main sensor. And we can really engage with a 5x on the Pixel, and I'm gonna go 3x on the S25 Ultra, first zoom camera, and 5x. So this is now 5x footage, guys. So I can zoom up to 20x on the Pixel. So this now is the 20x on both phones. Back to ultra wide. Alright, back to 1x. Let's try to run and test the stabilization. Okay, guys. Let's try to zoom on that caravan. There is a caravan there, 5x, okay, on both phones. Now let's go and do 20x on the Pixel and 20x on the Samsung. And let's try to estimate. Alright, 20x on both phones. Alright, and now back to 1x. And now what we can do is a zoom length cycle test, guys. Okay, this is the Pixel. Gonna go from the ultra wide to 20x, and I'm gonna try to do the same on the Samsung. Alright, Samsung ultra wide, and this is up to 20x. And now the same also on the Pixel, guys. Ultra wide 20x, ultra wide 20x. Alright, and now let's try to do this also on the Samsung. 20x ultra wide, 20x ultra wide, 2x, and now back to 1x, guys. So, as I said, it's although practically a very similar phone with a new Tensor G5, but also with a new ISP, which is an image signal processing. Besides the ProRes thing that kicks in when you reach 30x zoom, which I'm going to show you in the photos, it might be that the Pixel 10 Pro comes with more surprises. What about the video, guys? Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Alright, I'm getting here into a shady side. It's very important to check the accuracy of the white balance and also how well all the colors are handled. What about jitters? What about stutters? Let's try to go very close on a flower. Alright, the Samsung is already trying to switch. There is also a macro focus on the Pixel. It's not kicking in at 4K 60, don't know why, but it should be able to kick in. Alright, Samsung does it. Alright, switches the camera again. And now another stabilization test. As I'm going up. Now let's just do a 5x. Alright. And now let's go 10x, 15x. Alright. Very slowly panning for you guys. And we are now at 15x. I'm gonna go back to the 1x. And now it's time for some night action video. Now it's time to test the night video. So the Pixel 10 Pro is on the left side, and I'm shooting 4K 60 FPS. Auto FPS is switched off on both phones, which means that they will not be dropping frames to try to capture more light. So let's start running. Alright, one more time to test the stabilization with the night video. And now I enter an illuminated area. Okay. Now my face is lit up. Okay, I'm gonna turn slowly. Car is passing by. And now I'm gonna walk outside of the light. See what happens, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Where you think the best night front video is. Now, by the way, on the Pixel I can also do 1.4 and try to equalize the scene again, my face against the light. Skin tone is a bit red on the Pixel. And now let's see what the back camera can do. This is now the back camera. Okay, let's start with the ultra wide. Okay, it seems that the Pixel 10 Pro is able to capture more light with the ultra wide. All right, one more turn. And I'm gonna jump to 1x and 1x as well on the Samsung. Okay, and I can do 2x crop from the main camera on both. 5x engaging with the optical zoom, and 5x as well also on the Samsung. And I can zoom up to 20. This is now 20x on both phones. Yeah, as expected, it isn't great. Now going back to 1x. All right, let's try to run towards the light and testing night video stabilization. Okay, the exposure control seems to be a bit better on the Pixel 10 Pro. Okay, now let's walk slowly outside of the light. Start running again. Now let's try to switch to the ultra wide again. Ultra wide on the Pixel, ultra wide on the Samsung. Okay, 1, 2, 5 on the Pixel, 3 on the Samsung. Wow, not good. And 5 on the S25 Ultra. All right, and now back to the main camera. Let's start running again. Let's go to the ultra wide. 5x, 5x. Ooh. Try to equalize the shot. 1, 1. Let's start running. Now let's do the 5x on the Pixel and 5x on this. Ooh. Not great on the Samsung. Go back to 1. Do the 3. 5 on the Pixel again. And 5 on the Samsung. Going back to 1. Okay, let's do another test. Let's do 5 on the Pixel now and 5 on the Samsung. Okay, not great. Let me know, guys, what you think down below in the comments. And now it's time for some more photo samples.
Let's start with the ultra-wide camera. The S25 Ultra photos are gonna be on the right and the Pixel 10 Pro on the left. The Pixel 10 Pro has a 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera with an aperture of 1.7 versus 1.9 and 50 MP for the S25 Ultra. Overall, what we see from these photos, the results are very comparable. There are some minor details in terms of rendition and white balance, but overall in this photo what we can see is very similar. Now let's proceed to the main wide camera. We do have a 200 megapixel sensor, but of course I'm shooting 12 MP on the S25 Ultra, and we do have a 48 megapixel camera on the Pixel again, shooting at 12 megapixel. The aperture is the same on both phones. And again, the results, guys, are, I would say, comparable. When we start to nitpick, there might be some pros and cons for each of the scenarios, but overall I'm just thinking it is very, very comparable. And now we get to the 5x. So the Pixel 10 Pro has a 5x periscope camera with a bright aperture of 2.8 versus 5x and an aperture of 3.4 on the Samsung, but the Samsung does have also a very old 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom, which the Pixel doesn't have. So this is a 5x sample with the, I would say, almost very similar condition, and in terms of color accuracy, in terms of highlight exposure, and in terms of shadows control, I do believe that we do have a very similar result in this photo. But it's going to get even more interesting when we start reaching higher levels of zoom, specifically 30x, where Google will start to offer the Gen AI ProRes zoom. The 10x photo on both phones is a crop from the 5x optical cameras, and again it is comparable. I would say we have a bit more of a texture on the Samsung photo. It's a bit more muffled here on the Pixel, but overall the difference isn't big. This is the first sample where I'm using 30x, and again it is a crop from the 5x optical cameras on both phones. As you can see on the Samsung phone, I'm even able to read the numbers here. This thing here is the 30x photo from the Pixel 10 Pro without the ProRes. Let me show you what Google is doing when you kick in the ProRes. And this is now the optimized 30x with ProRes, where you can see that the AI started to hallucinate, because here again I can clearly identify letters, but not on the Pixel phone. Some attempts to get closer to the photos using the ultra-wide camera, 1.9 aperture on the S25 Ultra versus 1.7 on the Pixel, and yeah, the focus landed here, and on the Samsung the focus landed here. Again, if we start to zoom in, it is not so different at all. And another macro shot, but then from the main camera, where I disabled the autofocus on the Samsung and the macro mode on the Pixel to try to get an understanding of the natural field of depth and bokeh that was applied. And honestly, yeah, the Pixel isn't doing that bad. So yeah, I would say here I prefer the Pixel photo more. And this is a macro shot with the ultra wide. The autofocus was turned on here and the macro photo was turned on the Pixel. Hence I used the ultra wide cameras. So honestly, both aren't that great, and I do believe also very similar. And now the same result, but with autofocus off on the Samsung and macro photo off on the Pixel, just using the main wide camera to get an understanding on how close I can get, really close here, and also a sense of the natural field of depth coming from the sensor. And now another 5x photo. Now the Pixel 10 Pro has an advantage because the aperture is brighter, 2.8 versus 3.4 on the Samsung. So let's try to analyze the differences, guys. I do believe in this specific scenario, yes, both photos are very similar. Now again, there's gonna be some things on and off, like for example the wooden texture here, just a bit better on the S25 Ultra, and also the focus landed a bit outside of the object. But in general, if we are not trying to nitpick here, I would say a very similar outlook. And this is the 10x sample, no surprises here, as this is a crop from the 5x on both phones. Although guys, there is something regarding the processing, because when we try to zoom in, we just see that the S25 Ultra is able to retain more detail, and it feels more organic. I can clearly identify some things here that are just not so visible on the Pixel 10 Pro. And in general, my observation is that somehow, you know, from 5x to probably like 30x and way above, the Samsung is doing a better job, even when the ProRes is used by Google, or even if the ProRes is not used. And I'm gonna show you some samples later. Yet another shot from the main wide camera to try to reset your perception and just show you guys how close those photos are. Again, the S25 Ultra white balance is a bit more on the yellowish side, but overall Samsung is doing a nice job with the sky. Now if we have to nitpick, you can clearly still see some artifacts and bending. I don't think that Samsung was able to fully fix that issue, but overall the main outlook of the photo is very similar. The Pixel tends to over sharpen things a bit, and that scenario still like to believe that we have a very similar result. And another one from the main camera, practically that's the same photo. You can only notice some difference when you start to zoom in. Again, the processing is a bit more different and the focus doesn't always land exactly in the same way. I guess this is due to me being the person behind the phones. We see a bit more of a saturation on the Samsung colors, and still it is very similar picture. And another example with the 5x from both phones that really came up to be again similar. Okay, it's time to test the zoom, and starting from the ultra wide now, the Pixel I do believe has a wider camera compared to the Samsung, which can be an advantage. And again, it's using 1.7 aperture versus the 1.9 on the Samsung S25 Ultra, so it's probably be able to take a bit more light with the ultra wide camera. Again, a very similar photo rendered in a very similar way. This is the shot from the main wide camera where the green is so similar and the blue is so similar. Sometimes I just have a feeling, hey, that's the same phone. And of course, there's going to be some differences like the white balance apply, but in general, you're going to get very similar pictures in most of the scenarios. And now we're approaching the zoom territory. So this is a 5x shot from both phones, where I believe that the results again are comparable. Even sometimes probably the Pixel will be able to provide better results. The other time the Samsung will be able to provide better results. Now I think this is a very comparable shot. Maybe the Pixel got the lines better here, but it's interesting to see what is going to happen way more than 5x, and specifically when the ProRes zoom is going to kick in. This is a 10x photo, which should be very similar given the fact that it's a crop from the 5x, but the processing that is applied is weird on the Pixel, and we can clearly see S25 Ultra delivering better results on the 10x in some cases, of course, right? Not in all of the cases, but in this particular photo I do like this picture on the right more. And this is as maximum as I can get to that trailer. Now the S25 Ultra photo is here, and here we have the photo with the ProRes zoom applied and the photo without the ProRes zoom, so you can clearly see how Google is trying to trick the system, guys. So the ProRes zoom sometimes is gonna give you better results even versus S25 Ultra, but sometimes the processing can get very wild, and I'm gonna show some sample of this. But honestly, I do believe still that the S25 Ultra is closer to what really was there. And now it's time for portraits. One of the main things we shoot with our cameras, people, besides of course nature, cars and landscape. So this is a portrait, I do believe 1x using the main cameras on both phones. Honestly guys, yeah, it is comparable, although when we start to zoom in at this particular scenario, you can see some excessive noise here on the S25 Ultra, but 1x portraits aren't the best if you're not really very close to the object. In that particular scenario, I tried to use a 3x portrait, which on the Samsung is rendered by the 10 megapixel 3x optical camera with an aperture of 2.4, and the Pixel is using the main sensor, guys. So even with that old sensor, I do believe, yeah, the 3x portraits are just coming better. Out of S25 Ultra, it's just optical zoom. The Pixel, guys, can just use the main camera to do things like that, which isn't ideal and great. And the Pixel right now can do portraits only with the main camera. And yes, you have a 2x, which is going to be a crop from main sensor, and even a 3x, but it's going to be a crop from the main camera. So in this case, I totally prefer the one from the Samsung. But okay, let's go back to the 1x portraits. In this case, the main camera is used, aperture of 1.7 from the Pixel. Very good photo from both phones, although when we start to zoom in, we can clearly see that sometimes the Google processing is struggling with just matching the background and the hair and isolating the different hair strains. Again, this is just nitpicking here, guys. Overall, the skin tone is very good. Probably some excessive sharpening here on the Pixel photo, and somehow I really like the outlook from the S25 Ultra. It applies a bit more bokeh on default. Those are things that you can clearly change if you want in post, but I also want to praise the Pixel because somehow, you know, it gives a very sharp outlook and you can get a bit more, not only the face, but also the texture and the material from the t-shirt. And somehow in the portraits from the S25 Ultra, the emphasis is just kind of like on the object, but very good object separation. Another portrait with the main camera. Again, here we see how clearly the t-shirt is displayed, but then again, it just looks very digital. I think just a lot of sharpness is applied. And then also the issue with isolating the object from the background. So the S25 Ultra definitely handling this like a boss. Just look at this, like it really feels organic, and the more start to zoom in, the more like digital the Pixel photo looks. But overall, not a bad portrait. Another portrait example, honestly, I kind of like both of them. Again, very much focus here on the face, and on the Pixel we have a wider focus area, which has again some pros. You can clearly see some of the things like the t-shirt and the material. Overall, in this particular photo, the skin tone and the sharpness that was applied wasn't that brutal, but it's still more than the one on the S25 Ultra. And another 3x portrait, which, yeah, you know how it goes. We're using that very old 10 megapixel sensor, but hey, it's 10 megapixel, but it's 3x optical zoom. And yeah, with all the imperfections, still the Pixel photo is just a crop from the main sensor, and yeah, it cannot be really a much versus the true optical 3x portrait from the S25 Ultra. Another tough portrait scenario where the sun coming from the right, and honestly I do believe that both phones handled this quite okay, and even this time the Pixel was doing a very good job and to separating all the hair strains from the background. The S25 Ultra applying way more bokeh, but okay, this is the standard portrait mode. Again, you can really fine-tune those things if you want. Another portrait shot with 1x, honestly, good enough on both of them. Somehow the processing on the S25 Ultra looks a bit better according to my taste, but honestly, if I am not to zoom in, it's gonna be probably perceived as being a picture that is very similar, and only when you start to zoom in you can clearly see the imperfections and the tiny differences. So overall both pictures are good. And another shot from the main camera, this one landed up quite good on the Pixel. And another interesting shot for a 3x portrait where I was close enough to the object to try to beat like the 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom camera from the Samsung, but yeah, sometimes you cannot just beat physics, and at the end this is the result that you got. But at least this time it was a bit better than before, just using a crop on the Pixel. And another example, just like pure 3x optical portrait. It's not perfect, but it's way better than this crop where you can see an image that is so digital, it's just not good. And another portrait image 1x, a very good scenario for the phone because I was against the sun, so the sun is illuminating me, and yeah, I can tell you both photos are very good. Okay, time to reset the perception again with a sample from the main wide camera. Again, sometimes guys, I just have a feeling that this is the same picture, but apparently it's not. Just how close they are is amazing. And another shot from the main wide camera, we have here sun illuminating the building, then here we have some shadow. So overall, again, the white balance is probably the main differences. Everything else, guys, seem to be absolutely on par. And another shot where you can argue, yeah, that's the same photo, but it's not, and it is. Let's quickly check the 5x camera again. Now, honestly, when there is enough light, I do believe that both phones are producing, yes, a very similar results. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And again, an attempt for a macro photo, just using the main camera with the macro off on the Pixel and the autofocus off on the Samsung. Yeah, honestly, I do believe, yeah, very good, but somehow the Pixel 10 Pro has a bit more focus on the object. Another shot with the main camera, and yes, I was holding the phones exactly the same level, guys. I can just get closer with a Pixel 10 Pro, but overall, again, very similar rendition. And this is a 30x shot. Now, just see here, guys, this is a 30x from the Pixel without the ProRes, and this is with the ProRes. So with the ProRes, I do believe that it's trying to match a bit the 30x from the S25 Ultra, but S25 Ultra still able to deliver better and more consistent results. And have in mind, like, we can read here BIG, big, and the AI wasn't able to do something like that, like BIO maybe. Again, Gen AI is used to try to improve and guess what is on the photo. Multiple images are taken, analyzed, and yes, sometimes the results can be better, but sometimes it can be also worse. In that case, the S25 Ultra delivered the better shot. Check this example. I was trying to zoom in on that boat, and on the Pixel I'm already not able to recognize what is written there, a bit more on the Samsung. And this is the 100x shot. So yes, it's not perfect, but I can clearly try to see and identify some details on the Samsung shot. This is the 100x photo from the Pixel without the ProRes zoom, and yeah, you can see what the ProRes zoom tried to do. Like, it tried to invent some things that clearly are not there, all right? Like, take a look at this part in here and here, it's not the same. And also, what about this engine? Like here, yeah, I can probably guess that's an engine because that's a boat. On the 100x and Pro, this photo, it's very bad. And here, guys, this looks like a total Gen AI hallucination. I'm not sure, it looks like the alien or something coming out of that boat. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be worse. And sometimes the differences from ProRes and without ProRes aren't that high anyway. Let's throw in some animal samples. This is using the 5x camera on the Samsung, and this time the 5x photo from the Pixel landed up to be better than the one on the S25 Ultra, even with the excessive sharpening. And another 5x picture, this one is tricky. Honestly, I do believe that the 5x here from Samsung did a better job in retaining the details, specifically the fur. As we know, fur sometimes is very hard for the front cameras to be captured. And another 5x example to show us that Samsung are doing some things better than Google at the moment, and specifically the 10x processing here and the S25 Ultra is a tiny bit better than the one on the Pixel. You can just try to compare and let me know what you think down below in the comments, but this thing here on the right is better for me. Another 10x shot that is actually very similar on both phones, and another shot with the main wide camera to reset the perception and just show yet again, yes, sometimes it can really seem as you're using the same phone to do these photos. And another stunning shot with a very beautiful house from Afitos Greece, guys. Again, it looks to be very similar. This is an attempt for a macro photo. Honestly, both did well, and you can clearly recognize it's metal, you can clearly recognize the rust. Another zoom photo in broad daylight, which seems to be also very similar, as you can see. And another 5x shot where I do believe that Samsung nailed it a bit better than the Pixel 10 Pro. And another shot from the 5x camera that turned out to be very similar. And now it's time to answer the question, how good are those phones with moving objects? And the short answer is both of them are good if you have enough light. As you can see, the S25 Ultra on the right using the main camera versus the Pixel 10 Pro on the left. Again, a stunning shot, really, and probably even the Pixel 10 Pro was able to capture the better picture here, but I was just hitting the button like crazy and I get multiple shots. Honestly, very comparable. The same situation here. You can see we have very clear, very sharp details. Probably the Pixel is exposing the center object a bit more versus the Samsung, but overall very comparable shots. And another example to show you that this was no mistake. Yeah, it's very consistent. Again, if you have enough light, you're going to be able to take very good photos also with moving objects. And this is the last one from the moving series before we jump to the twilight and night photos. So what happens at night? Because again, the camera setup is very comparable. Sometimes the Pixel 10 Pro would have brighter apertures for the 5x and the ultra wide, and the same aperture for the main camera. Now this is a shot from the main camera. Again, it landed up to be not so much different. Okay, you can notice that Samsung saw a bit more of an excessive noise here, but honestly, if we are not trying to zoom in and nitpick, the shot ended up to be almost similar. Yet another shot from the main camera from both phones, where I do believe that the S25 Ultra was able to lend the focus better, but it's a hit and miss. Sometimes the Pixel will do it better, sometimes the S25 will do it better. In general, it's comparable. And another twilight shot from the main cameras. Now in this case, when we start to zoom in, yeah, a bit more information here on the S25 Ultra. Can try to read the plates. That's not the situation here. And this is an attempt for a twilight macro. Now both pictures aren't great. Probably I'll pick the Pixel 10 Pro. We can still try to see a bit more things versus the photo here on the right. Another shot with the main camera. Sometimes the S25 Ultra has a better highlights control. As you can see, the Pixel 10 Pro can get a bit crazy with the highlights, but honestly, besides that, no big differences. And in this particular case, the Pixel 10 Pro was able to control the highlights a tiny bit better than the Samsung. You can see a bit of an overexposure here and here, but overall, nothing drastic, guys. And again, it's a very comparable image. And another shot with the main wide camera, making me wonder, hey, didn't I use the same phone? No, this on the left is the Pixel and this on the right is the Samsung, and the result is very similar, as you can see. Let's check the zoom cameras at night. Yes, as you can expect, both of them are not so great, and I was surprised to see that even with the bright aperture, yeah, the Pixel 10 Pro wasn't that different compared to the Samsung, but you can check there are some interesting findings in the video domain. I really hope that you have watched the full video. Another 5x sample from both phones that turned out to be very similar, and another 5x sample that turned out to be very similar at night. Let's not forget the ultra wide. Now the Pixel 10 Pro has an advantage of having a brighter aperture, but I wasn't lucky and a car invaded my shots. But according to my experience, the S25 Ultra is still able to beat the Pixel with the ultra wide camera on its own, and you can just see things that you can see here and you cannot see here. And I'll close the video with one last shot from the main cameras, again showing and indicating how similar they can be sometimes, but yeah, sometimes again one will be better than the other. It really depends on the scenario and on your preferences. In general, both phones are really great. The video from the S25 Ultra definitely better compared to the Pixel, less jitter, okay, less panning, better stabilization, and the Pixel pixel temperature, can do sometimes better videos at night. It's going to be really a bit of a hustle here and there, but overall the S25 Ultra I do believe has an edge, offering 3x, which is an old sensor, but still, you know, we can do portraits, and 5x, and specifically that ProRes zoom is still not up to the level of the S25 Ultra zoom. Yes, sometimes it can be even better, but sometimes, and this is more often, it can also hallucinate and just, you know, generate things that are not there. Guys, let me know what you think down below in the comments, and if you have enjoyed this video, you might as well watch some of my other comparisons. Stay safe, VST over, and bye.